The hazy California sun cast long shadows across the streets of Long Beach, a golden glow that did little to warm the cool, often harsh realities of the neighborhood. This was the world that shaped Calvin Cortazar Broadus Jr., a lanky kid with eyes that held a universe of stories yet to be told. His mother, Beverly, a woman of unshakable faith and boundless love, nicknamed him Snoopy for his resemblance to the cartoon beagle. It was a name that suggested a playful innocence, a stark contrast to the gritty urban landscape that surrounded him. His father, Vernel Varnado, was a phantom in this narrative, a man whose presence was more of an echo than a voice, a whisper, of a memory from a life lived elsewhere. Vernel, a proud Vietnam veteran, carried the weight of a war that had ended but never truly left him. Back in the States, he found himself adrift, grappling with the ghosts of the battlefield, while trying to navigate the complexities of civilian life. The vibrant, chaotic energy of his family life in California felt a world away from the structured, high-stakes environment he had known in the military. The responsibility of fatherhood, of being a constant presence, felt like a foreign language he couldn't quite grasp, the words catching in his throat before they could be spoken. He loved his son, a truth that resided deep within him. Yet it was a love he struggled to express, to make tangible. The distance between them grew not from a lack of affection, but from a chasm of unspoken fears and unhealed wounds. Vernel watched from afar as his son navigated the treacherous waters of adolescence in a community rife with the allure of gangs and the promise of fast money. News of Calvin's first encounters with the law reached him like a distant storm, each report a fresh pang of guilt, a confirmation of his own perceived failures as a father. He saw a bright, talented boy being pulled under by the currents of his environment, and a profound sense of helplessness washed over him. From her home, in Long Beach, Beverly fought fiercely to keep her son on the right path. She saw the artist within him, the poet who could spin tales of the streets into lyrical masterpieces. She filled their small home with music, with the soul-stirring melodies of the gospel choir and the funky bass lines of Parliament Funkadelic. It was her way of building a fortress of creativity around him, a shield against the negativity that threatened to consume him. She spoke of Vernel with a quiet sadness, a man she had loved, a man who had lost his way but never, she insisted, lost his heart. Calvin, meanwhile, poured his frustrations, his fears, and his observations into his notebooks. The rhymes came, to him effortlessly, a running commentary on the life he was living. He wrote about the camaraderie of his crew, the ever-present threat of violence, and the yearning for a life beyond the confines of his neighborhood. His father's absence was a recurring theme, a ghost note in the symphony of his young life. He didn't hate the man he barely knew. Instead, there was a void, a question mark that hung over his identity. As his local fame grew, the name Snoop Dogg began to echo beyond the streets of Long Beach. Dr. Dre, the architect of West Coast hip-hop, heard something special in the young rapper's laid-back, melodic flow. It was a sound that was both dangerous and alluring, a voice that captured the zeitgeist of a generation. The opportunity of a lifetime was on the horizon, a chance to escape the cycle of poverty and violence that had claimed so many of his peers. Yet, with this new hope came a fresh wave of challenges, a level of scrutiny he could never have imagined. The temptations of the music industry were a different kind of battlefield, one that Vernel, from his distant vantage point, recognized, with a growing sense of dread. He saw the potential for his son to be swallowed whole by the fame, the money, and the lifestyle that came with it. The fear that had kept him away for so long now morphed into a different kind of anxiety, the fear of losing his son not to the streets, but to the very dream he was chasing. He knew he had to do something, but the years of silence had built a wall between them that seemed insurmountable. Beverly, ever the optimist, encouraged her son to focus on his gift. She reminded him of his worth, of the strength she had instilled in him. She knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but she had an unwavering belief in his resilience. Her faith was a beacon, guiding him through the darkest of nights. She prayed for both her son and for the man she hoped would one day find his way back to him, a father who held a missing piece of his son's story. The stage was set for a confrontation, not of anger and resentment, but of unspoken truths and the possibility of redemption. The world was about to meet Snoop Dogg, the superstar. But behind the iconic persona was a young man still grappling with the long shadow of his father's absence. The journey to the top of the charts would be intertwined with a much more personal journey. A quest for understanding, and a search for a connection that had been lost but never completely forgotten. The glare of the spotlight would force both father and son to confront the past, to reckon with the choices that had been made and the years that had been lost. It was a story that was about to unfold in the public eye, a testament to the fact that even in the high-stakes world of hip-hop, the most powerful stories are often the ones that are closest to the heart. The legend of Snoop Dogg was just beginning, but the story of Calvin Broadus Jr. and his father was far from over. This narrative was not just about the making of a rap icon. It was about the remaking of a family. It was a story that would resonate with anyone who had ever felt the sting of absence, the hope of reconciliation, and the enduring power of a father's love, however belatedly it might be expressed. The world was listening, and the most important verse was yet to be written. The journey ahead would be a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a story of how a father and son, separated by circumstance and personal demons, could find their way back to each other, their bond forged in the crucible of fame and forgiveness. The world knew Snoop Dogg, the artist, but they were about to understand the man, and the father who had, against all odds, found his way home. Years passed, marked by platinum albums, sold-out tours, and a level of fame that few ever achieve. Snoop Dogg had become a global icon, his influence stretching far beyond the realm of music. He was a businessman, an actor, a personality whose cool demeanor and undeniable charisma had endeared him to millions. He had built a life for himself. That was a world away from the sun-drenched, perilous streets of his youth. Yet, amidst the accolades and the success, the ghost of his father's absence remained, a quiet hum beneath the roar of the crowd. Vernell, now older and weathered by the years, had watched his son's meteoric rise with a mixture of pride and a deep, gnawing regret. He had reconnected with Snoop in a tentative, piecemeal fashion over the years, their interactions often brief and buffered by the entourage that now surrounded his famous son. The easy camaraderie he had seen his son share with other father figures in his life, like Dr. Dre and Tupac, was a constant, painful reminder of the role he had failed to play. The time for a true reckoning, he knew, was long overdue. He requested a meeting, not as Papa Snoop, the moniker he had affectionately been given by the fans, but as Vernell Varnado, a father who needed to speak his truth. They met at Snoop's sprawling California home, the opulent surroundings a stark contrast to the raw, unvarnished conversation that was about to take place. The air was thick with the weight of unspoken words, the years of distance creating a palpable tension between them. With a tremor in his voice that betrayed his tough exterior, Vernell began to speak. He didn't make excuses or offer platitudes. He laid his soul bare, confessing the fear and the sense of inadequacy that had kept him away for so long. He spoke of the horrors of Vietnam, of the difficulty of readjusting to a world that no longer made sense, and of the paralyzing belief that he was too broken to be the father his son deserved. He admitted that he had watched from the sidelines, convinced that Snoop was better off without his damaged presence. The most difficult part of his confession was yet to come. With tears welling in his eyes, Vernell admitted that there was a time, in Snoop's tumultuous teenage years, when he had almost given up completely. He had seen his son being drawn into the gang life, had heard the stories of his arrests, and for a fleeting, desperate moment, he had thought it was a lost cause. The thought of his son ending up as another statistic, another life claimed by the streets, had been a pain so sharp, so overwhelming, that he had almost turned away for good, unable to bear the weight of what he saw as his own failure. Snoop sat in silence, his characteristic cool replaced by a profound stillness. He listened, not with the anger of an abandoned son, but with the empathy of a man who had seen his own share of struggles. He saw not the phantom father of his youth, but a man broken by war and his own inner demons. He heard the regret in his father's voice, a regret that was as real and as palpable as the bass on one of his tracks. The confession, he realized, was not an excuse. It was an explanation, a plea for understanding. The room was filled with a heavy silence, the kind that follows a revelation that changes everything. Vernell, having unburdened himself of his long-held secret, looked at his son, his eyes pleading for a forgiveness he wasn't sure he deserved. He had gambled everything on this moment of honesty, risking the fragile relationship they had managed to build in their adult years. He had laid his broken pieces at his son's feet, hoping that they could, together, find a way to put them back together. It was a moment that transcended the fame, the money, and the larger-than-life persona of Snoop Dogg. It was a moment between a father and a son, two men from different worlds, bound by blood and a shared history of pain and resilience. The confession hung in the air, a raw, emotional truth that had the power to either shatter their connection for good or to finally, after all these years, pave the way for true healing. The silence stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. Vernell's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of his son's impending judgment feeling heavier than any burden he had ever carried. He had said what he needed to say, had exposed the darkest corners of his soul. Now, all he could do was wait for the verdict, hoping that the son he had almost given up on would find it in his heart to not give up on him. This was the turning point, the moment on which the future of their relationship hinged. For Snoop, it was a moment to process a lifetime of questions, to see his father not as an absence, but as a man with a story of his own. The anger and resentment that could have easily consumed him were replaced by a dawning sense of compassion. He was beginning to understand that his father's story was not just about leaving, it was about the struggle to come back. The confession was a painful gift, a key that unlocked a door that had been closed for decades. It was a testament to the fact that it's never too late to speak the truth, to seek forgiveness, and to begin the long, arduous journey of healing. The foundation of their new relationship was being laid, not on the shifting sands of fame, but on the solid ground of honesty and vulnerability. As the weight of his father's confession settled in the quiet room, Snoop Dogg, the man who had built an empire on his unflappable cool, did something that surprised even himself. There was no eruption of anger, no litany of accusations, no rehashing of the painful years of his youth. Instead, he rose from his chair, walked over to his father, and enveloped him in a long, heartfelt embrace. It was an act of grace that spoke volumes, a gesture that bridged the chasm that had separated them for so long. "I hear you," Snoop said, his voice thick with emotion. "I hear you, and I understand." Those simple words were the absolution Vernell had been seeking for decades. In that moment, the roles were reversed. The son became the source of strength, the anchor in a storm of long-suppressed emotions. He explained to his father that he had carried the weight of his absence for years, but he had never carried it with hate. Instead, it had fueled him, had made him determined to be a present and active father to his own children. Snoop spoke of his own journey, of the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. He talked about the allure of the streets, but also about the inner strength he had found in his music and in the unwavering love of his mother. He admitted that there were times when he had felt lost, when he had teetered on the brink of despair, but he had always found a reason to keep fighting. He had created his own family, his own community, but there had always been a piece of him that was missing, a piece that his father's confession had just begun to put back into place. He didn't absolve his father of his choices, but he offered him something far more valuable: empathy. He spoke of the importance of breaking cycles, of not letting the pain of the past dictate the future. He looked his father in the eye and told him that his story, his struggles, were now a part of their shared history, a testament to their family's resilience. He proposed that they not dwell on the years that were lost, but focus on the years they had left, on building a new legacy of connection and understanding. CTA. We're at the heart of the story now, and the emotion is real. If you're feeling this, hit that like button to show your support, and share this video with someone who needs to hear a message of hope and forgiveness. The conversation shifted from one of confession to one of collaboration. They talked about the future, not as a father and a famous son, but as two men who were committed to healing their relationship. Snoop invited his father to be a more active part of his life, not just for the public appearances, but for the quiet family moments, the birthdays, the holidays, the everyday stuff that truly mattered. He wanted his own children to know their grandfather, to understand the complexity of their family's story. Vernell, for his part, was overwhelmed with a sense of gratitude that left him speechless. The forgiveness he had received was more than he could have ever hoped for. He saw in his son not just a global superstar, but a man of profound wisdom and compassion. He realized that the boy he had almost given up on had grown into a man who was now, in a way, saving him, pulling him back from the brink of a lifetime of regret. Their conversation that day was a masterclass in emotional intelligence and the power of forgiveness. Snoop's response was not one of weakness, but of immense strength. He chose to build a bridge rather than a wall, to offer a hand up rather than a fist of retribution. He understood that his father's journey was a part of his own, and that by helping his father heal, he was also healing a part of himself. It was a response that would not only mend their fractured relationship, but would also serve as an inspiration to anyone who had ever struggled with a broken family bond. The news of their reconciliation, and the story of Vernell's confession, and Snoop's response began to circulate, not as a piece of celebrity gossip, but as a powerful human interest story. It resonated with people from all walks of life, a reminder that the complexities of family are a universal experience. It was a story that celebrated the courage it takes to be vulnerable, the strength it takes to forgive, and the hope that can be found in a second chance. Snoop's actions demonstrated a level of maturity and emotional depth that transcended his public persona. He showed the world that true strength lies not in being impervious to pain, but in the ability to face it with an open heart. His response was a testament to the lessons of his mother, the love of his family, and the wisdom he had gained on his own tumultuous journey. He had turned a moment of potential conflict into a catalyst for profound and lasting change. The healing had begun, not with a grand gesture or a public declaration, but with a quiet conversation between a father and a son in a sunlit California room. It was a conversation that would echo through the rest of their lives, a reminder that the most powerful anthems are often the ones that are sung from the heart. The confession had been the question, and Snoop's response was the answer, a melody of grace that would inspire everyone who heard it. The weight that Vernell had carried for so long had finally been lifted, replaced by a sense of hope and purpose. He was no longer just Papa Snoop, the father of a celebrity. He was Vernell Varnado, a man who had been given a second chance to be the father he had always wanted to be. And it was a chance he was determined not to waste, thanks to the incredible grace of the son he was now proud to call his hero. The embrace that ended that fateful conversation was not an end, but a beginning. It was the start of a new chapter in the lives of Snoop Dogg and Vernell Varnado, a chapter defined not by absence and regret, but by presence and a shared commitment to building a new legacy. The change was not instantaneous, but a gradual, deliberate process of weaving Vernell back into the fabric of the family he had been disconnected from for so long. The transformation was visible, not just in the private moments, but in the public eye as well. Snoop made a conscious effort to include his father in all aspects of his life. Vernell became a fixture at family barbecues, his laughter mingling with the sounds of his grandchildren playing in the yard. He was there for the quiet moments, sharing stories of his life with a new generation that was eager to listen. He attended Snoop's concerts not as a distant observer, but as a proud father, standing on the side of the stage, his face beaming with a pride that was impossible to miss. He was no longer a ghost in his son's narrative. He was a living, breathing part of it. The public began to see a different side of the iconic rapper. In interviews, Snoop spoke openly about the reconciliation with his father, not to garner sympathy, but to share a message of hope. He talked about the importance of forgiveness, of understanding the complexities of a parent's life, and of the healing power of an honest conversation. His story resonated deeply with his audience, many of whom had experienced their own family struggles. He used his massive platform to advocate for veterans, inspired by his father's service and his personal battles with the aftermath of war. Vernell, in turn, found a new sense of purpose. He became an advocate for veterans' rights, sharing his own story to help others who were struggling with the same demons that had haunted him for years. He spoke at events, his voice steady and strong, a testament to the healing that was possible when one was met with compassion instead of judgment. He and Snoop even collaborated on charity projects, their joint efforts a powerful symbol of their renewed bond. They were a team, a father and son united by a shared desire to make a positive impact on the world. There were, of course, moments of awkwardness, reminders of the years that had been lost. There were inside jokes he didn't understand, family stories he had missed out on. But with each passing day, the gaps began to fill. He learned about his son's life not through headlines and magazine articles, but through long conversations over a game of dominoes or a shared meal. He saw the man his son had become, a man of integrity, generosity, and a deep love for his family. One of the most poignant moments in their new journey came during a public event honoring veterans. Snoop was the keynote speaker, and he used the opportunity to pay a moving tribute to his father. He spoke of Vernel's bravery, not just on the battlefield, but in the quiet, courageous act of confessing his deepest regrets. He called his father his hero, not for his fame or his success, but for his resilience and his willingness to confront his past. The sight of the two men embracing on stage, tears in their eyes, was a powerful image that went viral, a symbol of hope and redemption for millions. Their story became a part of the larger Snoop Dogg narrative, adding a new layer of depth and humanity to his public persona. It was a story that showed that even the most successful, seemingly untouchable figures grapple with the same fundamental human needs: the need for connection, for understanding, and for forgiveness. Their journey was a reminder that it is never too late to rebuild a broken bridge, that the past does not have to be a life sentence, and that the strongest legacies are often forged in the fires of adversity. Snoop's children, who had only known their grandfather as a distant figure, now had a chance to build their own relationship with him. They saw the love and respect their father had for Vernel, and it created a safe space for them to connect with him as well. Vernel, in his role as a grandfather, found a joy that he had thought was lost to him forever. He was making up for lost time, not out of a sense of obligation, but out of a genuine love for the family that had so graciously welcomed him back into the fold. The change in Vernel was profound. The weight of his guilt had been lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and belonging. He was no longer defined by his past mistakes, but by his present actions. He was a father, a grandfather, an advocate, a man who had faced his demons and emerged, on the other side, stronger and more whole. His journey was a testament to the transformative power of forgiveness, a living example of how a single act of grace can change the entire trajectory of a life. The new legacy they were building together was not one of fame and fortune, but of love, resilience, and redemption. It was a story that was still being written, each day a new page, each shared moment a new verse. They were a testament to the fact that family is not just about blood, but about the conscious choice to show up, to be present, and to love, even when it's hard. Their journey was far from over, but they were finally on the same path, walking side by side, a father and son who had found their way back to each other. This new chapter was not just a private victory. It was a public declaration of the values Snoop held dear. He was showing the world that true success is not measured by record sales or box office numbers, but by the quality of one's relationships and the ability to lead with love. He was using his story to inspire others, to encourage them to have the difficult conversations, to seek help when they need it, and to never give up on the people they love. The confession had opened a door, and what they were building on the other side was more beautiful and more meaningful than either of them could have ever imagined. The story of Snoop Dogg and his father's reconciliation was more than just a heartwarming family tale. It was a cultural moment that sparked a conversation far beyond the confines of the entertainment world. The raw honesty of Vernel's confession and the profound grace of Snoop's response created a ripple effect, inspiring countless individuals to confront their own fractured relationships and seek a path toward healing. The narrative, amplified by Snoop's global platform, became a source of hope and a practical guide for those navigating the complex terrain of family estrangement. Fan mail and social media messages poured in, not just with praise for Snoop's music, but with deeply personal stories of reconciliation. People wrote about reaching out to estranged parents, siblings, and children after hearing his story. They spoke of having the vernal conversation, a new term coined by fans to describe the act of laying one's soul bare in pursuit of forgiveness. The story had provided a blueprint, a way to start a conversation that many had thought was impossible to have. Snoop, deeply moved by the outpouring of personal stories, embraced this new role as an accidental advocate for family healing. He began to incorporate themes of forgiveness and second chances into his public appearances and even into his music. He spoke with a newfound sense of purpose, understanding that his personal journey had a universal resonance. He realized that his life's work was not just about entertaining the masses, but about connecting with them on a human level, sharing the lessons he had learned in the hope that they might help others. The ripple effect was also felt in communities that had long been stereotyped and misunderstood. In neighborhoods like the one Snoop grew up in, where stories of broken homes and absent fathers were all too common, their story offered a powerful counter-narrative. It was a story of a black father and son breaking a cycle of pain, a testament to the strength and resilience that often goes unseen and untold. It challenged the media's often one-dimensional portrayal of black fatherhood and offered a more nuanced, hopeful perspective. Community leaders, therapists, and social workers began to use the story of Snoop and Vernell as a case study in their work. It became a tool for facilitating discussions about masculinity, vulnerability, and the impact of trauma. The story demonstrated that strength is not about emotional suppression, but about the courage to be honest and the compassion to forgive. It was a particularly powerful message for men, who are often socialized to hide their pain and avoid showing vulnerability. Inspired by the public's response, Snoop and Vernell took their advocacy a step further. They established a foundation dedicated to supporting veterans and their families, with a special focus on providing resources for mental health and family counseling. They hosted workshops and events, creating safe spaces for people to share their stories and learn from one another. Their joint efforts were a powerful symbol of their commitment to turning their personal healing into a source of public good. The impact on Vernell was particularly transformative. The man who had once been paralyzed by his own shame was now a source of inspiration for others. He found a new voice, a new purpose, a new reason to get up in the morning. He was no longer just Snoop Dogg's father. He was a man who had turned his life's greatest regret into his life's most important work. The act of helping others allowed him to continue his own healing journey, to find a sense of redemption that he had never thought possible. The media, which had once feasted on Snoop's legal troubles and controversial lyrics, now began to tell a different story. They wrote about his evolution as an artist and as a man, about his commitment to his family and his community. His public image was reshaped, not by a calculated PR campaign, but by the genuine and undeniable power of his personal transformation. He was seen as a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of hope, a man who had faced his demons and emerged on the other side with wisdom and grace. The story of their reconciliation became a part of their family's lore, a tale that would be passed down through the generations. It was a story of how love, in its most compassionate and forgiving form, could heal even the deepest of wounds. It was a story that proved that the most powerful legacies are not measured in wealth or fame, but in the positive impact one has on the lives of others. The ripple effect of their story was a testament to the enduring power of a single act of forgiveness. What started as a painful confession in a quiet California room had blossomed into a global movement of healing and hope. It was a reminder that our personal stories, in all their messy, complicated glory, have the power to connect us, to inspire us, and to change the world in ways we can't even imagine. Snoop and Vernell had not only healed their own relationship, they had provided a beacon of light for countless others who were lost in the darkness of their own family struggles. Their journey was a powerful illustration of the idea that true influence comes not from a position of power, but from a place of authenticity. By sharing their vulnerability, they had created a space for others to do the same, setting off a chain reaction of healing that continued to spread far and wide. The rapper who had once been the voice of the streets had become the voice of the heart, and his message of hope was his greatest hit of all. In the years that followed the confession, the bond between Snoop Dogg and Vernell Varnado solidified into something unbreakable, a testament to the hard work, forgiveness, and love that had gone into its reforging. The awkwardness of their initial reunion gave way to an easy, natural camaraderie. They were not just father and son, they were friends, confidants, and partners in their shared mission of spreading a message of hope. Their story had reached its final, most fulfilling chapter, one defined by mutual respect and an unshakable sense of family. Vernell became a beloved and integral part of the Broaddus clan. He was Papa Snoop to everyone, a title he wore with immense pride. His presence at family gatherings was no longer a novelty, but a cherished tradition. He taught his grandchildren how to play chess, shared stories of his youth, and offered them the kind of quiet, steady wisdom that only comes with a life fully lived. He was a living, breathing example of the power of a second chance, a constant reminder of the importance of never giving up on the people you love. Snoop, in turn, continued to honor his father in both his public and private life. He often spoke of the profound impact their reconciliation had had on him, crediting his father with teaching him the true meaning of forgiveness and the importance of confronting the past. He saw his own role as a father in a new light, understanding that his most important job was to be present, to be honest, and to create a legacy of love that his own children would carry forward. Their relationship had become a source of strength for him, a grounding force in the often turbulent world of entertainment. Their foundation flourished, becoming a significant force for good in the lives of veterans and their families. The sight of Snoop and Vernell working side by side at charity events became a familiar and inspiring image. They were a dynamic duo, the charismatic superstar and the wise, soft-spoken veteran, their different styles complementing each other perfectly. They had turned their personal pain into a public service, their journey a beacon of hope for countless others. Their work was a testament to the idea that healing is not a solitary act, but a communal one. The story of their reconciliation became a cornerstone of Snoop's legacy, as important as any of his hit records or classic albums. It added a layer of depth and humanity to his persona that resonated with people from all walks of life. It was a story that transcended race, class, and culture, a universal tale of the enduring power of family. It was a story that would be told and retold, a modern-day parable of redemption and grace. In a quiet moment, during the filming of a documentary about his life, Snoop was asked what he considered to be his greatest achievement. Without hesitation, he looked over at his father, who was standing just off camera, and said, "That right there. Mending that relationship. That's better than any platinum plaque or any award I could ever receive." It was a simple, heartfelt statement that perfectly encapsulated the journey they had been on, a journey that had brought them both a sense of peace that had once seemed unattainable. The story of Snoop Dogg and Vernell Varnado is a powerful reminder that the most profound stories are often the ones that are closest to home. It's a story about the courage to confess, the grace to forgive, and the unwavering belief that it is never too late to find your way back to the people who matter most. It's a story that proves that even in a life filled with fame and fortune, the greatest riches are the ones that can't be bought. The love of a family, the peace of a clear conscience, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his son. Their journey was not a fairy tale with a perfect, happy ending. It was a real-life story of two flawed, complicated human beings who made the conscious choice to heal, to grow, and to love. It was a story that was messy and painful, and ultimately incredibly beautiful. It was a story that would continue to inspire, to resonate, and to remind us all of the transformative power of a second chance. The echoes of Long Beach had once been filled with the sounds of struggle and absence, but now they were filled with the sounds of laughter, of conversation, and of a love that had been lost and then found. The ghost of the past had been laid to rest, replaced by the vibrant, living presence of a father and son who had found their way home, to each other. Their bond was a testament to the fact that the most powerful music is not always found on a record. Sometimes it's found in the quiet, steady rhythm of a healed and loving heart. The sun still cast long shadows across the streets of Long Beach, but for Snoop Dogg and Vernell Varnado, the light was warmer, the future was brighter, and their path forward was one they would walk together. Their story was a testament to the enduring power of family, a reminder that even after the darkest of storms, the sun will, eventually, shine again. And for this father and son, the sun was shining brighter than ever before. Their legacy was secure, not in the annals of music history, but in the hearts of the millions they had inspired. It was a legacy of hope, a legacy of healing, and a legacy of the unbreakable bond that can exist between a father and a son when they choose to lead with love. The final chapter of their story was one of peace, a peace that had been hard won and was now, deservedly, theirs to cherish.